Sean Haney here with RealAgriculture.com and Real Ag Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM, that you can hear every weekday, 4:30 Eastern on Rural Radio 147. Well, we've got corn harvest underway in Ontario, and a lot of optimism about some of the yields. There is some quality concerns, and we're going to chat about that right now. We're joined by Paul Hoekstra. He is VP of Strategic Development at the Grain Farmers of Ontario. Paul, great to chat with you.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Okay, let's start off with the GFO OMAFRA Dawn survey that's been completed. I'm not sure I'm giving it its appropriate name, but we all know what I'm talking about. Maybe you can correct me on that.
Sure.
Now, when was the survey done, and what are we trying? What are we trying to find out?
Yeah, a little bit of background on the survey itself. So every year, Grain Farmers of Ontario and OMAFRA get together to better understand the likelihood of Dawn presence in Ontario corn. So this occurs typically, depending on the year, depending on the season, the crop conditions, end of September, early October. This year, a little bit later. And so what we're seeing this year is increased levels of Dawn in corn in certain areas of the province, pockets, if you will. So it's generally in southwestern Ontario and certain pockets in the western part of the province that will need some monitoring. But it's a joint effort between GFO, OMAFRA, and the Ontario Agri-Business Association and its members to get good data to help guide the harvest and as we proceed with the season.
And Paul, what were some of those results? I guess, we think about in the last 10 years, we think about 2016. Nobody forgets about 2018. So, give us some background here on where we are in terms of these results and where
Sure,
some of the pockets of concern are.
Yeah. So thanks, Sean. So it really is important for us to know that, obviously we're seeing some elevated concentrations compared to the last 4 years, but this is not as broad as 2018 by any stretch. And there's really great expectation that we're going to anticipate that we're going to see high volume of good quality corn in the province as well. So we are seeing some pockets in southwestern Ontario. The survey that's available on Field Crop News, showcases around shows pockets in that Essex area, but other parts of southwestern Ontario too, that really farmers should be focusing on monitoring their crops, monitoring their fields prior to harvest.
Now, my understanding of the survey is that 77% of the samples are under 2 parts per million.
Right.
That's a good news story. We had 5% of the samples that were over that 5, which I guess is concerning. But like you said, it's located and it's that number is not over 5% at this point. So, what should growers be doing? From GFO's perspective, what should growers be doing to come up with that best management plan? Because the number doesn't go down, right? My understanding is with the weather and we've been dealing with this wet weather. It's so frustrating for a lot of the growers. We've got to come up with a plan. And so what should we do?
So since 2018, the Grain Farmers of Ontario has worked with a variety of researchers to kind of come up with some information and help develop best practices in terms of either, looking at storage options, also looking at sampling options, how samples should be collected, samples should be treated or conditioned prior to Dawn testing to kind of give the good representative sampling for the farmer and the elevator at time of purchase. So, obviously, yes, there are pockets that will be challenging. So what we're recommending to farmers is, scout your fields first of all. If you have those areas that, are going to have high risk, prioritize those fields, keep them separate from corn that we know is going to be good and not impacted. Making sure you're talking to your elevator, understanding what their acceptance levels are, and if you can, test your own grain prior to delivery. If you have the ability to do so, store your grain. Be prepared as well to harvest what are the normal corn if you can and get that off the field as much as possible. If you can have the opportunity from best practices from harvesting, look at your combine, get rid of those cob tops and fine materials that we know have elevated levels in Dawn that may give you an erroneous result from the corn itself. And opportunities to look at grain cleaners as well to help remove those additional additional fines. But really the key part of this at this stage of the game is just know your fields, talk to your customers, talk to your grain agents, and if necessary, make sure you're engaged with Agricor on any sort of production coverage as well.
Yeah, and no kind of the costs. And why I say that, I think, is I've had conversations with a few growers who have said to me, well, you know what? Yeah, like I know there's concern about the jib out there, but like drying's expensive,
Mm.
right? And hey, I'm not going to disagree with that. And we're hopefully going to have 234 at some point passed in the Senate and figure it out to give an exemption on some of the carbon tax on the grain drying. But you need to figure that out, the balance there, because this this corn, because of the weather, and we haven't had a lot of drying conditions in Ontario either.
Mm.
So there's a balance here where the grower needs to look at, okay, that drying cost may be the lower. My first cost is sometimes my best cost, right?
Mm.
So the drying cost, yeah, I hate paying for the more drying, but I'm if the dawn level in the field, because it's out there for longer, if I'm in one of these more heat mapped areas, that could really cost myself. Like my grandpa used to say, save a nickel and spend a dollar kind of thing.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit, that balance.
Yeah, certainly it's going to have to be every grower situation is going to be different. Every, their customer, their elevator they're going to be dealing with, or the end user is going to have different needs and requirements. So really understanding what those thresholds are from your network is absolutely vital to understand what your risk is and what your ROI will be at the end of the day. Is making sure you really have a good handle on what's going to be accepted, what do you have to do or not do to get that grain to market.
Okay. And you mentioned the fines.
Mm.
That managing those fines is really ideal, especially when we're getting to the marketing stage and some of the sampling.
Mm.
How you manage those fines could have a big impact on what your level is of that dawn. Is that correct?
That's correct. Absolutely. Making sure you're at time of harvest, really taking as much care as possible to get rid of those fines that have that concentrated amount of dawn in them, to really help you with getting the best data for your actual sample or loads that you're delivering to the elevator.
How does this survey help GFO target some of the research that you're funding? Is there a lot of work to be done in this area, or do we fully understand kind of this whole process and the development of the jib and how we manage the harvest?
Yeah, I think the survey it's valuable for two points. One, just helps us understand the quality of the crop that's coming off and how we as a sector need to manage it, whether that be with marketability or business risk management tools, but understanding what the issue is. But then, dawn isn't as much of an issue in the US. They have a bigger market, bigger opportunity to blend. Our market is much more localized, and so knowing what dawn is like and the threats that it faces to our farmers, it helps us to then prioritize research in that area in terms of either new technology, new genetics, and that's an important part for us to further explore. And just looking at what are the things that the whole ecosystem when research can help to offset that. So technology like crop protection products and having those come to market, new genetics, like I said, or just even opportunities to explore sampling, grinding of corn samples, getting new tools to market to best get a representative sample and have the best data to make decisions.
Paul, this is like one of those situations we've seen this in like every harvest brings challenges, right?
Yeah.
So I think of the falling number issues we had in Western Canada a couple of years ago. Like you find out how strong your partner is at the elevator, but it's important to have communication with some of those delivery points that you are working with to kind of come up with that marketing plan. Whether your corn is under the 2 parts per million, it's at 5, or it's over, you really need to. There's an example of where, hey, here's what I have. What do I do? And work on some of those partnerships from a communication standpoint.
Absolutely. Having that communication is absolutely key. So you're not being caught unprepared when you go to the elevator. And then they have as well, they know what's coming. If they know there's challenges that they themselves can also work with you to help, blend the corn that could be impacted, and find a way to bring all the corn to market as much as possible. In addition to, those communications, one of the things that Grain Farmers of Ontario has done recently is we've worked with OABA on code of practice, sort of helps outline processes if you have samples and grading being done. If there's a dispute or a question around what the real number is or what the grade is like, there's a process we've stacked hands on and say this is what we'll do to sort of work through that. And recently, GFO has published a contract guide for farmers. It's a resource for them as well to, when they look through their contracts, what are the things that they should be aware of? What are the questions they should be asking their elevators, just to make sure they're crystal clear on what the requirements are. So yeah, absolutely, communication is absolutely critical at this stage to help bring crop to market, but also in the future too.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, the situation doesn't get like those levels don't go down as the harvest progresses. So is there a second phase of the survey in the harvest year, or is this is we just do one flush of it?
We just do one flush of it, really, to sort of at that critical time right now to sort of say, to your point, it won't get better, but here's the situation as it exists today. To make some at least some preliminary recommendations of where we're going. It doesn't continue on the survey, but it will sort of help guide action within the marketplace.
Paul, thanks a lot for joining us here today. Really, really appreciate it, and we'll chat with you again soon.
Great. Thanks, Sean, for having me. Appreciate it.